Hello my emetophobics. Apologies in advance for the rubbish sound quality. I am currently in isolation, so you will get the joy of hearing my voice through my laptop recorder. Yay! Anyway, I hope you're all safe and enjoy the video. I continued with the CBT, Hypnosis, and Emetophobia resource website until my CBT sessions came to an end, and I no longer felt like I needed the hypnosis. I felt brilliant, confident, and ready to restart my life. I did have setbacks, of course, there's no quick fix, but it didn't matter as much, because I was able to deal with them and move on when they came up. Sometimes I would have panic attacks, and my brain would become terrified of leaving the house, but all I had to do was make myself go for a walk, and everything would calm and go back to normal, because I was proving to my brain that I would be fine, and I was. By this point, I felt so confident that I ended up moving to a new city and started up a life living together with my boyfriend. I started a new job, which I enjoyed for 6 months, before being made redundant and starting another job. I loved my walk to work, I loved my flat, I loved my relationship, life was good. The only thing that was bothering me was that I started to notice that I was becoming dependent on my hypnosis. I started to notice that I could only go 3 days without listening to it, before my anxiety levels started to rise and my emetophobia became more profound. I had been listening to this particular hypnosis for years and hadn't had this problem before, so I was confused. I wanted to stop using it because the only time I had to listen to it was as I went to bed, and I found that it made my sleep restless. In comparison to not listening to it and my sleep being deep and restful, I realised that I was avoiding not listening to it, and as I had been taught in CBT, avoidance was bad and only fed the problem. If I avoided leaving the house when my brain wanted, things would get worse and I would find it harder to leave, whilst if I didn't avoid leaving the house, things would get easier. There are worse things to be dependent on, for sure, but I didn't want to continue something if it was going to make things worse. I was feeling strong at this point, so I decided to quit listening to the hypnosis altogether and monitor what happened. Once I got over the 3-day non-hypnosis hump, things were a little tricky, but I managed. I felt like my brain had increased sensitivity, like my anxiety was easier to provoke, but I was doing well, and I was proud of myself. I got about 2 weeks in, feeling good, and then things started to go downhill. On my day off, me and the boyfriend had gone for a day trip. Without going into specifics, my sensitive brain became triggered on the journey up, and for the entire day, I had insane anxiety, with my brain repeatedly screaming at me, whatever I did, that I was going to be sick. Usually, if I had anxiety, I found that if I distracted myself, it would go away, and I could enjoy my day. But not today! It just wouldn't stop. And I was terrified. When we finally returned home in the evening, I was so exhausted from panicking the entire day that I ended up crying. I was so tired of fighting my brain, and annoyed with myself for it being so bad after the progress I'd made. I could feel myself slipping back, so I immediately decided to listen to my hypnosis again, determined that I would not go back to that horrible place. Yes, I was continuing my dependency, but if it was a toss-up between a hypnosis crutch and a normal life, or no hypnosis and a terrible life, I only really had one option. I never quite recovered after that day. The hypnosis helped a little, but my walks into work became increasingly difficult because my brain would scream at me that I was going to be sick. One day in particular, at the end of May, it proved to be too much. I had to skip breakfast because I was late leaving the house, but I was going to grab something once I was at work. I began my walk and my brain started screaming, and it wouldn't stop. I tried doing various things to distract myself, playing Pokemon Go, listening to hypnosis, listening to an audiobook, but nothing was working, and I was terrified. I was desperate now, walking as quickly as I possibly could to get to work so that I would be in a safe space and could calm down, but my brain wouldn't stop. And suddenly I realised something. These feelings seemed very familiar. Being out of breath, moving too quickly, being terrified, trying to get to my safe space. And then I realised, at that precise moment, I was feeling exactly the same as during the jogging incident. My brain latched onto that feeling and suddenly it screamed at me, "It's the same! It's going to happen again! You're too out of breath, you're going to get to your safe place and start gagging violently and it's going to be horrible and you might actually be sick this time and your co-workers will see you and you will be stranded at work." That thought drove my anxiety to near insanity. I was 1 minute away from work, but I couldn't get there fast enough. Pure terror ran through me as I was approaching the shop. I could see one of my co-workers going in ahead. He said hello, and I managed to blurt out the words "panic attack" before pushing past him and running straight to the loo and locking myself in. I tried to calm down, breathing heavily as my brain screamed at me that I was going to gag, that history was going to repeat itself, but this time it was going to be worse because I was more mentally unstable. But I didn't. I didn't gag. At all. I was fine. What happened instead was a full panic attack meltdown as my brain attacked me with everything it had. On my phone's playlist I have the sound of a slow heartbeat, and after getting my shaking hands to press play, this was what eventually calmed me down. And I did calm down, and I was fine. Fine. Nothing happened. But I was, understandably, incredibly shaken. I ended up sobbing because I was so disappointed in myself. I'd worked so hard to live a normal life, and everything was unravelling. It took me a full hour to completely calm down enough to come out of the toilet and go back into the shop. I was still terrified and my brain desperately wanted me to go home, but I didn't want to feed the problem and avoid work just because my brain wanted me to. I decided to stay in the situation and stick it out for as long as I could, and, if I absolutely had to, as a last resort, I would go home. And I managed it. I had to wait a while and bear with my insane anxiety, but I did eventually manage to distract myself enough for it to drop, and for my day to continue as normal. I took the bus home at the end of the day, being too terrified to walk just in case it happened again. I shouldn't have avoided the walk, but I was too mentally exhausted to face battling my brain home. After that day, it felt like my brain had been kicked back to square one. All my old thoughts and anxiety came swarming back, and I became too nervous to leave the house. I refused to let it beat me, though. I refused to go back to that dark place, and began preparations to make things easier. I had to discard my lovely walk to work, because it was now too terrifying, and instead took the bus there and back. I messaged my homeopathist and told her everything, and she immediately sent out a remedy for me. I carried on as normal, with the added crutches for help, and very slowly, over the course of a month, began to get better. I did what I'd been taught in CBT, to gradually expose myself to the outside world and reteach my brain that there wasn't anything to be scared of. I was slowly climbing back up out of the darkness, and it was working. By the end of the month, I was still taking the bus, but I was able to walk to the park and lay in the grass by myself without anxiety. Things were looking up, and I was getting stronger. At the end of June, we had a family trip planned. We were going to America for 2 whole weeks. I had been dreaming of going to the US my whole life, so I was excited. I wasn't completely mentally stable, but I was doing okay, and there was no way that I was going to miss this opportunity. Besides, the tickets had been booked a year in advance. I figured that the trip would either make me better, because there was going to be so many new exciting things that it would distract my brain, plus I would be with my family, the people who made me feel the safest, or it might make me worse, because I wasn't stable enough. Either way, I was absolutely going, and I would face the consequences, whatever happened. The thing that most concerned me was the jet lag. Over the recovery month, I had found that the more sleep I got, the better my brain functioned. The less sleep I got, the worse it became, and the harder the anxiety and brain screaming was to handle. I was aware that the flight might be a little rocky due to us getting up early, but I was ready to handle it, and besides, there would be things for me to watch on the plane. We got up around 3 a.m. and travelled to the airport. I hadn't had much sleep, but I was doing fine, and I was excited, making sleep-deprived jokes as we were going through customs. We passed through the airport with no problem, and just as we were waiting to board, I heard my plane number called out for inspection. No one else from my family, just me. I've been on various flights throughout my life, and this had never happened before. I had nothing to be nervous about because I wasn't harbouring anything illegal, but as I was being separated from my family, the people who I felt safest with, my brain chose this moment to freak out. My anxiety ramped up to 100 and my brain started saying, "You're all alone, your family can't help you if you're sick, you can't leave because you have to be inspected and they'll think you're guilty of something. What happens if you're sick now? You won't be able to cope." Gradually, the group of people I had been picked out with were called forward. It was excruciating how long it took. It felt like hours. But I was finally called up and had my belongings searched. Then was sent on my way back to my family. My anxiety dropped a little, but my brain had now been triggered, and I didn't fully return back to calm. As soon as we boarded the plane, exhausted from battling the anxiety, I immediately fell asleep. For about 40 minutes. That was it. For the whole flight. Throughout the entire 12-hour flight, my brain went through continuing waves of anxiety. The in-flight movies helped as a distraction, but I had the charming combination of super loud, unrelenting engine sound and the complete lack of sleep, plus bad mental capacity, combined with my brain being super alert to anyone that might be being sick on the plane and being ready to protect myself if that happened, as well as my brain intermittently telling me that if I ate or drank anything, I would be sick, or that the movement of the plane would make me sick, or that the movement of the plane would make everyone else sick and I wouldn't be able to escape because I had to stay in the cabin. I had this charming combination for 12 hours straight, and through the course of that had 6 anxiety attacks, all inwardly, of course. My parents thought I was doing okay. As if that hadn't been enough, as a final kick where it hurts, I went to the toilet before we landed and couldn't work out how to reopen the foldable door when I was finished. I ended up banging on it, panicking in a tiny enclosed, very, very loud engined area. Yes, I did work out how to open it, but by this time I was done with my brain. Think that's the end of the spiral? Think again, my friends. Tip of the iceberg. Check out episode 5 for what happens next. I'll give you a hint, it gets worse. Don't worry, it does get better eventually, just bear with me.